Hi, so this is for my AMP 1 class, this dissecting of the sheep brain. So I have my sheep brain here. You can't really see it, but I have already dissected this. Is one half of it, and I have the other half here. And so when we look at this, I'll just bring it down here so you can see it. You won't be able to see me, but you can see the brain. If I can get it lined up here. So we have the brain here. Sorry, I don't have a table, so we kind of had to work with what we have. But anywho, this part here is going to be more of our frontal lobe, and for quick definitions, our frontal lobe is going to be the area which controls our motor functions, and then we also have our pretendial, I'm terrible words, but pretendial lobe, which is going to be this area across here, the top or mid portion of our brain, which is going to control our sensory info, kind of where we receive and process our informations. And then we have our temporal lobe, which is going to be the mid lower portion of the brain, more down here. And for our temporal lobe, it is going to be what controls our auditory processes. That way is what we hear and how we process it. And then we have our cerebellum, which is going to be this here. It's kind of like, makes me think of like the pocket. Just because how it looks, it's just like blop. And then cerebellum controls like our muscles, kind of like some of our muscle movements, kind of helps us stay like steady and everything. And then we have our brain stem, which is this right here. And our brain stem kind of connects to our spine, our brain, and it controls some of our vital functions. We also have our occupational lobe, which is going to be the other side of our temporal lobe in that midsection, lower midsection, and that's going to control our eyesight. Okay, and then we are going to have, trying to look at all what we need to describe. When we open the brain up, while I already have these two pieces disconnected, you're going to be able to see our white matter here, the lighter shades, and then our gray matter is going to be that around it. Our white matter is going to be the inside matter, and our gray matter is going to be the outside. Just a couple ways that I remember this by is, I have it written down. Or the white matter, it's white because of the axons with the melanin on it, which makes it white. And then our gray is kind of processed and interrupts kind of some of our information. And here you can see it on the other side of the brain too. Hopefully, the white matter and then the gray matter. Then on the inside of our brain, we're going to have, let me look at it. We have the cerebellum, which we already talked about on the outside. And this is going to connect to our spinal cord. So we can see it, cerebellum. This connects to our spinal cord. And then the central canal should be right in here of the brain. It should be like kind of in the middle of this piece here. And then we're going to have our foreventral, which is going to be right in here, right between these two, between the cerebellum and our medial, I believe it's called. The foreventral is going to be right there. And then we have this, which is like don't correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but the medial is going to be like the lower portion of this piece here. And then our pomace is going to be kind of right in here, I want to say. Because it's going to be farther up than our cerebellum where it starts. So it's going to be right in here, I believe. on the bottom part though, not the top part. And then we're going to have our midbrain, which is going to be in here. It's going to be even a little higher up. And then we're going to have our hypothalamus, which should be kind of like hanging off almost, if it's like the picture I have here from the guide, but it doesn't look like we have one. Maybe we did and we just kind of not included with our dissection kit here. And then we have our hypothalamus, which is going to be this lower portion of the top part of their brain, which might be this piece right here. And then we have our optic nerve, which is going to be a frontal piece towards the front of our brain. Be higher up than what's already cut off here, but it's me a fronter. And then we're going to have our olfactory bulb, which is going to be right in here. And then we're going to have our cerebral aqueduct, which is going to be right in here, that kind of that front side of that cerebellum. And then we have our superior colitis, which is going to be right in, kind of going to be, let me look at this right in here, I believe. Kind of right in there. And then we have our penile body, which that I believe is this piece here. But it might be this piece here. I think it's this one if I'm correct. And then we have our thalamus, which is going to be this bigger piece here. And then we have our third ventral, which is going to be right there on top of it, kind of that groove you can see. And if you look at our fourth ventral, it also is kind of like that groove. If I point out the right thing, that is. The fourth ventral is going to be, you can see the groove there. And for the third, you can also kind of see the groove there. And you kind of move it when you prod it. And then we have our corpus calamus, which is going to be this lighter shade here. Then we have our septum penicillum, which is going to be the middle part of that, kind of in there. And then we have our sulcus, which is going to be, it's a groove. And it should be right here, I believe. Then we have our gyrus, which is going to be right there below it. And I believe that's all the parts we need to label and kind of point out. And I also have some quick definitions, just kind of explain what some of those pieces are. Let me pull them up for ya. I just have them written down so I wouldn't have to find them off the top of my head while I'm thinking about it. So we already talked about our matter, our white matter, and our gray matter. Then we have our brainstem, or our midbrain, which responds to like our sight and kind of our audio. And then we have our medullum, which is the brain stem. And then we have the pons, which is the sensory, the motor information that we acquire. And then we have the pineal body, which makes and secretes our melatonin, so we're able to like sleep. And our hypothalamus, it maintains our homeostasis, so it maintains our blood pressure, maintains our breathing, making sure that everything stays the way it should, and not having crazy heart rate, breathing super slow or anything crazy like that. And then our thalamus is our sensory and motor information, kind of where we get all that. We kind of store it also. And then I don't believe I showed you it, but our coroplets, which makes the cerebellum fluid. And then we have the optic charisma, which is like our visual pathways. So what we see kind of. Then we have the olfactory bulb, which is our smell signals. And then we have our spinal cord, which communicates a pathway for nerves. There are brainstem, which controls our vital functions. And I know a couple of these I'm going over a couple of times just because I have it written here as I was going through the guide, trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. And the hypotenuse, it relies on our sensory and our motor information. And then our medial connects the brainstem to kind of form that homeostasis. And then we did go over all the lobes and kind of the outside. So yeah.